Hello and welcome back to my channel. So one of the things that I find super fascinating about React is the ability to write hooks. But hooks are like more complicated when it comes to like writing them. I mean, the documentation did a pretty good justice regarding that, but you can always extend a hook, customize your own. So this is going to be a series of YouTube videos where I'm going to be talking about all types of hooks that we have in React, and also how you can write your own custom hook by leveraging like internal hooks which is already provided by React for us. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at something as simple as the useState hook. And basically from the name, it simply means that this is a hook which we can use to like handle our state, and we can use to like manipulate the state and manipulate some kind of variable in our React code. So without talking too much, let's just jump straight into the code. So as you can see now, the screen is being recorded. And if you take a look at what we currently have here, you can see we have a very simple React component. This is just, I'm using Code Sandbox for this, for guys that have never used Code Sandbox before. It's a way to kind of like run a simple React application without the need to do like npx create React app or something like that. So as you can see right here, we have the useState hook, and what are we doing here? We have a count and we have a set count. Just to use our value, you can see this hook always provide us a value, two values, by the way. It's an array of values. The first value is always the state itself. It handles like, it holds the value of the state. And the set count, which is like the second value, you can always call it whatever you want, but this is like the common practice. You call the count, which is like the state itself, you call it like count, and then you call the function like set count. It can be like book and set book, for example, depending on what's the value, the variable name. Variable name can be whatever, right? So in this case, we can pass our count, we can give our count like some default value, or we can decide not to, depend on the usage. In this case, we're going to give it a value of 0. And if we come here now, we can use our count value. How do we use that? We can simply let's just use let's have a div element instead. So let's create a div. And inside of our div, we can just use our count, just like that. And so here on the UI, you can see right there, we have our interactive UI here. So we have it here, our count is 0. And that's mainly because the default value of our count is 0, which we have set here. We can basically do something simple and put it as 43 here. And our count value is also going to be like 43 right here on the UI. But what's more interesting about this useState? We say like it's a hook which we use to store a state, and what happens whenever you kind of like update the state? What happens is like your component will render, which means that your state value will get updated and then it will be displayed to you on the UI like immediately, right? So let's do something simple. Let's just create like two buttons. So let's create a button 1. This is going to be our first button, and then let's create our second button. So just like that. First button, what's that going to be doing? We call that decrement. And the second button is going to be what? Increment. Let's call it increment. To make it more interesting, let's put our value inside of our button, so that way, we kind of like have our value inside of it. Let's remove the first one, so we know what we are incrementing and what we are decrementing. So now to actually use this function, we have the set count function, and what can we do to use it? We can create a constant. We can create our own new function to kind of like handle that instance. So we want to decrement and we want to increment, right? So we can say const on increment. The first one is decrement, so we can say on decrement. So that's going to be an arrow function. I'm writing an arrow function in this case. If you don't know about arrow function, I'm also going to be explaining that in a separate series of videos, so watch out for that. An arrow function, and what do we want to do here? So we want to take the set count value, right? We want to say set count, and what do we want to say? We want to say count minus 1, because every time we call this function, we just want to subtract 1 from our count. So and now what can we do? We can go to our button and say on click of this button, whenever we click this button, we want to do what? We want to decrement. And just like that, we can save this. So whenever we click on decrement, you see how our state is handling that, and our count is being decrement -1 every time we do that. -1, -1, -1. And we can basically do the same thing. We can do the same thing for our increment. So we can say constant. I can basically just copy and paste this bit of code and then copy like that, and I can just say on increments. Just like that. But on increment, we want to do what? We want to add one value to our state, right? So let's take on increment right here and do exactly the same thing. We say on click of this event. On click of this event, we want to do something simple and straightforward. We want to increment our state. Currently, our state value is in 32. So if we increment it, it's going to go like to 33, 34, 35, and 36. There's actually something we should take into account. It's when we are using our set count, you can always get your previous value from it. So it has it also has like a callback function, like inside of it, because it is a function, and inside of it, it also gives the value of the current count. So in this case, we call it set count. So which means that there's a previous value. You can say do something like this. We can get our count from it. Let's just call it our value, or we can say value, current value, something like that to make sense. So current val like this, current val, and what do we want to do instead? Then we want to say we want to increment the current value, or we want to console.log the current value. Console.log. We want to console.log the current value. So what am I doing here? Inside of our set count, the first one here on decrement, we decremented -1, but also what do we do here? We log our current value. We can see that's simple and straightforward here. Let's clear this, and then on decrement, so let's move this down. When we click on decrement, what do we get here? Our value gets decremented, but we also get 35 here. But if you take a look at something which is important here, what do we do here? We don't see our value anymore. The main reason for that is because we are not setting any value here. What instead we are just like logging it. So that's pretty much how our React useState hook works. If you want to learn more about React hooks, like the following ones, like we have use effect and so on and so forth, watch out for the next video, because this is going to be about that. Thank you for joining my YouTube video today, and see you on the next one.